Most pods are created through the API server. A static pod is different. It is managed directly by the kubelet on a specific node. The kubelet can watch a local manifest directory. When it sees a pod YAML file there, it creates that pod on its own node. The modern configuration is static pod path in the kubelet config file. That path points to the directory. The kubelet periodically scans for static pod YAML or JSON manifests. The file itself is a normal pod manifest. It has API, version v1, kind pod, metadata, and containers. The difference is where it lives and who reads it. The local kubelet reads the file. The file is local to a node. Putting a manifest on worker 1 does not create the same static pod on worker 2. Static pod changes are not a scheduler event. The kubelet scans the configured path periodically. When files appear, change, or disappear, kubelet reconciles the local containers. There is no scheduler decision here. The file lives on one node and the kubelet on that node runs it there. This is the key debugging trap. The API server may show a mirror pod, but the API object is not the source of truth. The kubelet and local manifest are. The static pod source is the local manifest file. If you create a normal pod with kubectl apply, that is an API managed pod, not a static pod. When the API server is available, the kubelet can create a mirror pod. That makes the static pod visible through kubectl, even though the kubelet remains the real manager. When you list pods, a static pod mirror often includes the node name and its pod name, such as static web-worker1. That hint tells you to investigate the node's manifest path. A common use case is bootstrapping control plane components. In kubeadm clusters, components like the API server and scheduler often run as static pods. Static pods help bootstrap because kubelet can start critical control plane components from local files, even before you rely on deployments or a healthy scheduler. In kubeadm-style clusters, the control plane static pod manifests commonly live under /etc/kubernetes/manifests. That is where you inspect files like kubeapi, server.yaml. To change a static pod, you change the local manifest file. The kubelet notices the file change and recreates the pod from that file. One official caution is easy to miss. Kubelet processes files in the static pod directory and does not simply filter by .yaml. Do not leave backup copies in that directory, because kubelet may try to read them too. To remove a file system hosted static pod, move the manifest out of the watch directory. On the next scan, kubelet removes the local pod. Moving it back lets kubelet recreate it. When debugging static pods, inspect the kubelet configuration, the static pod path, and the files on the node. The answer may not be in a deployment or replica set. Because the kubelet is managing the local container, CR1CTL can help on the node. You can list containers, inspect status, and read logs even when the API view is confusing. If the manifest is invalid or the image cannot run, the kubelet is where the problem starts. Check kubelet logs and the mirror pod status if one exists. If you manually stop the container for a static pod, kubelet notices and starts it again. The desired state is still the manifest file in the watched path. If a static pod keeps coming back, remove or fix the local manifest file. Deleting the mirror pod only removes the API reflection, not the local source. File system manifests are the common CKA path, but kubelet can also use a web-hosted static pod manifest through a manifest URL. The same local kubelet ownership model still applies. Two final details matter in real clusters. Kubelet ignores files starting with dots in the manifest directory, and while older examples show pod manifest path or manifest URL flags, static pod path in the kubelet config is the preferred model. The final mental model, normal pods, are API managed. Static pods are kubelet managed from a local or configured manifest source. Mirror pods give visibility, but durable fixes happen at the source file.